Chapter 8 The Alchemy of the Universe. Quote, Most truly I say to you, unless a grain of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains just one grain. But if it dies, it then bears much fruit. Whoever is fond of his life destroys it, but whoever hates his life in this world will safeguard it. What you sow is not made alive unless it first dies. End quote. Taken from John chapter 12, verses 24 through 25, and 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 36. The word alchemy originates from an interesting belief from medieval times. It was thought to be the practice of chemistry where matter could be transformed and given a new essence. The main reason people would pursue this was because they wanted to learn how to transform any metal into gold. Whether this was truly done or not, it is mostly considered a myth. And although considered a myth from the past, scientists have been able to apply a form of science through chemistry by recreating gold from other metals. But why is this chapter named after a myth, now a proven scientific process? Let's consider that the opening scriptural reference is pointing out to a fantastic understanding of the nature of the universe, regarding our progressive realization of our dreams and goals. This chapter is designed to help us become aware that once we activate a seed of creation based on our biggest desires, milestones of experiences must happen that will let us know exactly where we stand in connection with the progressive realization of our dreams. What happens after making a decision? We have talked about what is necessary to make our dreams and goals come true. We have discussed the science behind the power of our minds. We have discussed what happens when we transmit a vibration based on our desires. We have also described what happens to the universe and the etheric realm and how our dreams are accomplished by the influence of the universe. We have also talked about the attitude we must develop to be able to get what we desire. We learn how faith plays the most important role. But here's something that is incredibly rare. I have been personally exposed to incredible amounts of information and have only seen glimpses of the concept. I have examined thousands of pages in books, thousands of hours of audio material, from teaching systems scientifically designed, to personal mentorships from multimillionaires, to books written by ultra-successful people. This following concept is touched on briefly or discussed slightly throughout these sources, but most don't see this lesson because most people, in reality, do not want to hear it. Subconsciously, it shuts people off even though it is one of the most wonderful principles of success that will make everything we want happen faster and faster. I know for myself that it took me more than 5 years to really grasp this concept. It seems I was just not ready to receive its lessons. I feel it is mind-blowing and exciting to know what this nuance does to our collective vibration. But what does it do? In essence, what is happening is that the universe plays blacksmith, chemist, and metal refiner. It takes our being and ignites a fire so intense that it infuses us with power beyond what is normal. The fire is so intense under us that it brings scummy drops out from our entire essential energy to turn us into that which we most desire. Like the mythological alchemy, this process will absolutely turn us into precious, refined, and pure gold. The irony is that it only happens when our decisions are destroyed and killed, and like a seed that falls to the ground and dies, only then will it sprout and spring with life and fruitage. We must let go of what we already may have accomplished so far, and as John D. Rockefeller aptly put it, quote, "Don't be afraid to give up the good to go for the great." End quote. The irony The universe convinces you that it is impossible. We must pay close attention and let's be aware. We now know that it is our transmission of vibration that creates what we want. There is an irony to which we must be self-aware and attentive that pervades the universe. Yes, it will bring you people, circumstances, and events that bring you closer to what you want. The question then is this: what exactly is the nature of those people, circumstances, or events? The nature of the first set of PCS, quote, being at the right place at the right time. Consider that the acronym almost sounds like the word pieces. It stands for people, circumstances, events, and situations. So just like pieces of a puzzle, the universe will bring you people, circumstances, events, and situations that puts together our dreams and makes them come true. The first pieces, like a miracle, are presented into something that will speak to us so deeply as the solution, idea, or highway to the result that we're looking to get. It will also fill us with hope, motivation, and energy that drives us forward with full confidence to our desired outcome. It makes us decide to follow it to its conclusion. We will feel like luck or God is on our side, holding our hand, telling us that it is ours. What is happening, in essence, is that the laws of magnetic attraction are being made powerfully active in our seat of desire based on our decision to create what we desire. But then the irony of all ironies kicks in. The nature of the second set of pieces. Have we been convinced that it is impossible? The irony, it seems, and let's pay close attention, is that the universe seems to begin to betray you. Suddenly, pieces beyond our control begin to destroy our hope, motivation, and energy. In essence, this second set of pieces begin to eat away our dream or goal. They start to give us fears and doubts, and they begin to convince us that what we want is impossible to achieve. At this point, we become confused, frustrated, and wonder whether we have made the right choices. This is where most people quit. But since this phenomenal concept must happen, as it is integrated and programmed into the hardware and fabric of space, how can we ever accomplish what we want? This is the great irony. This is that intense fire. It is the key that will absolutely make our dreams come true. We must know and be self-aware that once this seemingly negative force begins to occur, we come to the threshold where we decide to continue our pursuit, regardless of what seemingly negative situations have come up. We either decide to follow through somehow, anyway, or quit altogether. This is the universe playing alchemist. This is the universe trying to rid of our scummy drugs, the worthless qualities and mentalities that are holding us back. Nikola Tesla called them the inexorable agents which prevent a mass from changing suddenly its velocity, that will likewise resist the force of the new knowledge until time gradually modifies thought. It must be clarified and precisely stated now that what we must realize that our decision to continue or quit is not connected to the idea, the how, or the means of achievement that we may have chosen to achieve what we want. For example, we may decide we want financial freedom. As we continue to transmit the frequency of financial freedom, we will meet with the lucky circumstances that tells us this is the how. It could come in the form of a business opportunity if what we want is a measure of financial prosperity. It could be that a really great relationship begins to develop if our focus of transmission is companionship. The irony is that this how or means of achieving the desired outcome will just fall apart many times due to reasons beyond our control. It may also cost us an incredible amount of resources and energy. Thus, we will meet with feelings of great disappointment. It may feel like it was all a waste. What we must know once we have arrived at this point in the journey is that all the energy that we have given to this point is being reinvested into its final outcome. Like a high interest investment account, it will continue to accrue till it matures, and thus we will cash in on its dividends. This is the decision we must reestablish. We must notice that these unlucky circumstances and situations do not prevent us or stops us from transmitting what we desire. It only challenges our faith, perseverance, and ability to continue focusing on our desire. This is why most people quit. It is because we may not realize that it is not our dreams that are being crushed, but our ability to persevere and ability to hold on to our vision. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. It will either help us focus on what we want more intensely, or we may decide to focus on the lack and the absence of our desire. It will either help us transmit a collective vibration of energy so powerful that it will absolutely permeate our universe to make what we want happen, or it will completely shut us down and completely convince us that it is essentially impossible. Our decision must be reaffirmed. The scripture reference gives some powerful illustrations of this concept. The story of Joseph, the 11th son of Jacob, son of Isaac, son of Abraham, is such story. If the reader has not personally read it, it is certainly encouraged that you stop reading at this moment and read that account for posterity. It is found in Genesis chapters 37 through 47. The illustration will become a vivid, powerful mental lesson that will kick in to remind us to continue once we find ourselves in need of it. The mind pictures and lessons will become powerful arsenal, for when the time comes, we can engage in energetic combat and win. Joseph's pieces. Joseph seemed to have been favored by God himself. God had given him approval by giving him the ability to interpret dreams. This did not go well with his brothers, since they kept making fun of him to the point of envying him so much that they started to hate him. Their hatred toward their brother was so intense that they conspired to kill him. Although they did not follow through with their scheme, they ended up selling him into slavery. On a side note, this account really emphasized some points about our dreams and goals. Once we make a decision, we must be careful not to describe what we want to unfavorable ears. They will hate us for it and envy our determination to pursue that which we want. This could be really detrimental to our mental stability and our ability to sustain a frequency for long durations of time without any resistance. Another point is realizing that we may have come into a place where we feel that a lucky star is shining over us. Thus, like Joseph, it will also seem like we were given really favorable pieces. Joseph was filled with the hope and dreams since he was little. He was told that they were favored by God and his angels and was promised incredible wealth and power. Joseph's ability to receive dreams from God and interpret them does seem to have given him ample validation of his blessed status. The irony is that for years, he finds himself receiving pieces that begin to frustrate him and confuse him. Thus, in a very real way, will absolutely happen to us. We are all endowed with very specific innate abilities. The universe will match us with pieces that can exploit and train those innate abilities so that we can achieve our ultimate potential. Therefore, we will receive what we ultimately want much faster. The fascinating lesson here is that we do not receive what we want until our training is completed. Once we have learned the necessary powerful lessons in our personal lives, then and only then will we qualify to receive the bigger dream. This is again the universe playing alchemist, turning us into refined gold. The nature of the third pieces will fill us with hope and happiness. They will absolutely, with 100% certainty, through the universe, whet our appetite with success, triumph, and a measure of affluence. Then the compulsive force kicks in once again. A repetitive exchange in our awareness begins to be presented to us. For the events in the nature of the second set of pieces and the third set of pieces begin to program us. This takes place in our energetic blueprint. Thus, back and forth like a tennis ball, we are tossed from what seems like failure or dissatisfaction to a measure of success and prosperity, and the process repeats itself. Joseph ends up working and managing a political branch. The scriptural reference called it Potiphar's house. At this point in his life, things seem to be turning around. Quote, "But Jehovah was with Joseph. As a result, he became successful and was put over the house of his master, the Egyptian. And his master saw that Jehovah was with him and that Jehovah was making everything that he did successful." End quote. Taken from Genesis 39, verse 2 and 3. But just when everything seems to be working out just fine, everything collapses right under his feet. Potiphar's wife becomes romantically interested in him and tempts Joseph to commit adultery. Joseph, doing the right thing and realizing it would be wrong to take advantage, fled. This backfired on him and he was put in prison under the wife's false accusation of attempted rape. In the same manner, it will seem that although our success is imminent and we have arrived at something that is good, the universe again tries to convince you it is impossible. Through pieces beyond our personal control, everything seems to not work out or just plainly fall apart when we think we are ahead. The irony kicks us out of our comfort zone. The nature of the fourth set of pieces, the green light to failure. This is the paradox of paradoxes, one of the ironies of irony. This will really test us and compels us into extreme confusion. It will absolutely happen at one point that when we get the green light to pursue a course of action, we will be convinced by the universe that it will get us to our destination. Thus, we are forced to take massive and immediate action. This is acting in harmony with our faith and connection to our desire, and we know it has to happen. We plunge into what is presented to us through fortunate circumstances, but then it happens. It blows up right in our face and we are made to fail through pieces beyond our control. Bummer. The unfortunate part is that it happens when we feel that success is already ours. We will feel like we have almost achieved what we want. Like a runner who has exhaustively and progressively ran toward the finish line, but steps on a rock and completely loses a race because of a sprained ankle. We must accept that this is not an exception, but the rule. We will absolutely be given the green light beyond a shadow of a doubt. Moreover, the nature of the pieces will absolutely disappoint us beyond belief. An example of this energetic concept, or alchemy, is found in the scripture reference in Judges chapter 20, verses 17 through 35. This account is much more obscure and not as commonly known as the account of Joseph, but it still drives a powerful point home. I would certainly encourage you to read it for posterity. In this account, the nation of Israel finds itself having a civil war. One of the 12 tribes of Israel, the Benjaminites, had allowed a small city to go unpunished. Its citizens had gang raped a traveling fellow countryman's wife. Not only did they do so, but they abused her for a whole night to the point of death. The nation was consulted by this man, and finally the nation decided to punish the perpetrators by having them put to death, but the guilty tribe did not want to give up the man. The nation had a system of support where they were able to access God's counsel and approval whenever they felt the need to engage a campaign. This time, they were about to start a civil war and wanted to know from God whether they should begin such a course of action. They got the green light. As we read the account, the nature of the fourth set of pieces kicks in. Even though they had Jehovah's approval and the green light, they lost the first battle. Confused and frustrated, they asked Jehovah once more, and lo and behold, they get the green light again. Ironically, they lose the battle this second time too. After the third time, the nation wept and sat before Jehovah, and they fasted on that day until the evening and offered up burnt sacrifices and communion offerings before Jehovah. The third request for favor was finally endowed with success. Although this may be an extreme case, this civil war does teach us a valuable lesson. It is our ability to persevere relentlessly that will enable us to conquer that which we are trying to achieve. Quote, "Keep on asking and it will be given you. Keep on seeking and you will find. Keep on knocking and it will be open to you." End quote. Interestingly, on a side note, the word Israel means persevere or contender. It is when this begins to occur that we must acknowledge that we are being tested and refined. We must let our resolve intensify and use the negative emotions we will experience to focus. This will project nuclear explosions from our transmission of energy to create what we want once we decide to use such amplified power to our benefit. The nature of the fifth set of pieces, we win. Quote, "Jehovah continued with Joseph and kept showing loyal love to him and granting him favor in the eyes of the chief officer of the prison. So the chief officer of the prison put Joseph in charge of all the prisoners in the prison. And everything that they were doing there, he was the one having it done." End quote. Taken from Genesis 39, verse 21-22. Ironically, God seemed to have allowed this seemingly unfortunate event happen to Joseph. At some point, Joseph's apparently useless ability to interpret dreams comes in handy. As he interpreted the dreams of Pharaoh's chief cupbearer and chief baker, it seemed that a lucky coincidence has now come to his aid, for an opportunity to be set free. Joseph, in faith, asked the cupbearer to remember him once he's out, and to give good word of Joseph so that he may be freed. Again, ironically, once the cupbearer had resumed his position before Pharaoh, he forgets about Joseph and his interpretation of his dream. But finally, at the end of 2 full years, Pharaoh had a dream which only Joseph could interpret, which caused Joseph to be free from prison. Joseph then gets appointed to a position only second to Pharaoh, with authority over all the kingdom. Overnight, he went from being a lowly prisoner to the second most powerful person of that nation. But why would the universe make us go through such personal ordeals or seemingly negative situations when we ask and transmit the frequency of our desires as we are exercising our faith? Why do we go from one negative situation to a measure of peace, to only experience the same thing again? Why must we go through things like a hamster uselessly running on its wheel? Why did Joseph have to wait another 2 years after using his miraculous ability before he saw any real results? Was God being stubborn, unfair, and just plain mean, as if to say, "You will get it when I say so"? The answer has to do with the nature of energy in the field of particle physics defining time and space. These occurrences remove what is being referred by Tesla as the inexorable agents which prevent a mass from changing suddenly its velocity. God, in this instance, was molding Joseph and making him go through rigorous training, refining him like metal, drawing out scummy droves by putting him into an intense fire to turn him into what he needed to become, the second most powerful ruler of the known world. As we continue to read the account, Pharaoh's dream came true. The 7 years of prosperity and the 7 years of famine occurred, at which point Joseph was then, and only then, capable of fulfilling what was before his future assignment. Joseph successfully managed to fulfill his role and save the lives of millions of inhabitants. Entire nations benefited from Joseph's experience of being able to handle somebody else's goods during his training. Quote, "The person faithful in what is least is faithful in much, and the person unrighteous in what is least is unrighteous in much. Therefore, if you have not proved yourselves faithful in connection with the unrighteous riches, who will entrust you with what is true?" End quote. Taken from Luke chapter 16, verses 10 through 12. The point is clear and simple. What we currently are, or our current vibrational set point, cannot possibly receive that which collective energetic vibration is much higher. Our dreams and goals, when bigger than ourselves, will modify the inexorable agents and remove the things that are preventing us from achieving or becoming what we desire. It is imperative that we become what we must become to receive that which we desire and learn the valuable lessons along the way as they are being presented to us. In essence, we do become what we think about most of the time, but it will take some time. We cannot hope to receive what we want tomorrow if its energetic blueprint and field is at a much higher frequency. It is only our relentless transmission that creates it. So as long as we perceive that we must persevere in holding on to its constant transmission, then and only then we will receive what we want. The spill effect from the vibrational creation from the etheric field is what is going to make it happen. If it were to happen when we think it is more convenient, it would just fall apart. This is why it happens many times that people who win the lotto and acquire massive amounts of money all at once end up just as broke or worse than before after about 5 years. It has to do with the person we become and not the destination. It is not the money or goal in itself that transforms us, but the lessons we learn along the journey that qualifies us to receive what we have been asking for all along. Tying the pieces together, it is of utmost importance that we realize that like a game being played, we must know what is expected from each of the players. We must realize what the rules are and how the game is played. The milestones in our route to success have now been laid out. There are not many books that have codified such principles and laws of nature. Since such is the case, it is our moral obligation to know how to play the game better so that we may improve upon it. We now know what is to be expected once we make the decision to direct our personal energies towards a campaign of achievement. We must know that the bigger our dreams, then the better we must become for it. The lessons we learn on our way to what we want will propel us to infinite heights. If we sit back and think of people who are ultra successful based on their personal physical manifestations in the real physical world, then we can readily observe a powerful movement and shift in those people's minds. Let's think for a second about the person who has billions of dollars of assets at his disposal. What do they have? What do they do? What do they wear? Where do they live? What are their lifestyles? Some of these people have $100 million yachts. They buy super sports cars that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. When traveling, they reserve suites and rooms that cost anywhere from $10,000 to $40,000 a night. They spend $400,000 a year in traveling expenses, not including the price of their private jet, which could be $40 million. How much does it cost to dock and maintain a yacht? Are they buying $5,000 shirts, suits, and ties? Do they live in $30 million homes? Have we ever really sat down and thought about what these people dream about? They're already there where many people would love to be, but what else do they dream about? What are their goals once they have reached such heights? These questions are not about material things or about buying what our perception considers to be expensive. but this is about our ability to sustain a vibration for a prolonged period of time to its manifestation. It is a powerful scientific observation of empirical evidence to us when we are able to observe these people's efficacy in materializing what they desire. It is wise to remember that our current vibrational set point may be far from such things, and as such, inexorable agents that need to change through these various firewalls may indicate that a rigorous amount of energy must be exerted to its final completion. The person who is 200 pounds overweight must refine their entire character and habits of behavior and essentially remove inexorable agents that have created their undesirable situation if their dream is a healthy and strong body. The person who is a criminal and is in dire need of reform must also refine their energetic blueprints if they are to become exemplary citizens. Regardless of the goal or dream, much energy must be exerted. The story of Joseph illustrates this point well. He had to go over a number of firewalls to finally get to the point where he qualified to receive such a position of responsibility and stewardship. This is not to say that every goal or dream is just going to be some arduous process where our sanity will be tested to its limits. It is considering the gap between vibrational blueprints that require the manifestations of our desires. It is the difference of personality from the person we are to the person we want to become. A person who is 200 pounds overweight cannot hope to accomplish to become Mr. Universe in the next couple months. It will certainly take more considerable effort than the person who's just 50 pounds overweight. The person who is born in the projects and grows amid crime and injustice can certainly become a lawyer or a successful politician the same way a person who is born in a privileged family can. The starting points of these examples are two different spectrums, but one will have to exert much more energy than the other in comparison. Either way, both can eventually get there. It is an exciting journey to know that we can become whatsoever we desire. To have, be, or do whatsoever we desire is an absolute certainty. But is there a way to know for sure that what we may choose to acquire is truly the best for us? We have all heard of the miserable lawyer who wanted to open a restaurant. His real dream was never accomplished. Or the young man who was groomed to acquire a huge business enterprise just to forfeit all to become a Formula One racer. The doctor whose parents pushed her to become so, when in reality, her true passion was to become an actress. The successful business owner who inherited wealth, but his dream really was to explore the world through the field of archaeology. We get the point. How to unfold your own personal legend. Quote, all the depth of God's riches and wisdom and knowledge. How unsearchable his judgments are and beyond tracing out his ways are. End quote. Taken from Romans chapter 11, verse 33. Quote, call out to me and I will answer you and readily tell you great, incomprehensible things that you have not known. End quote. Taken from Jeremiah chapter 33, verse 3. At this point, it is the desire of the author to advise the reader of the possibility of letting go consciously to what they think is the best goal or dream and what isn't. Let me explain why. Maybe at this point you are already integrating this knowledge and looking to apply it in your personal life. I know I did and I still do. We have arrived at a point where I feel there is power beyond what we have talked about. At this point, I will be going off on a tangent and express my personal opinion on limited information and thus acknowledge I could be 100% wrong, but maybe not. As we have been discussing carefully how the universe responds to our transmission of frequency, we have also acknowledged that this is nothing more than what has been discerned in the past as the power of prayer. When we personally express our prayers to God or a divine entity, we are only in essence transmitting our frequencies to the universe in an instant through all time and space. Our requests for favor, our gratitude, and our grievances are all being simultaneously heard, and by law, they must be acknowledged and given to us a personal answer. Even if we are an atheist or agnostic, we can still take to heart that we can command the universe to make what we want happen as if we were powerful gods ourselves. Did not Christ's consciousness give evidence to this statement? Quote, "For truly I say to you, if you have faith the size of a mustard grain, nothing will be impossible for you. Whoever tells this mountain, be lifted up and thrown into the sea, and does not doubt in his heart, but has faith that what he says will happen, he will have it happen." End quote. Taken from Matthew 17 verse 20 and Mark chapter 11 verse 23. This may be controversial and hard to accept, but the laws of physics tells us that it is so, and it will continue to be proven by present and future empirical evidence. I also dare to say that the past statement has been proven behind the scenes, but like powerful secrets, it will only be revealed to those who are privileged. I have also acknowledged that I have been using the reference of universe and God as parallels, but never suggesting that they are one and the same. This is where theological philosophies may start to be interpreted, and I do not feel adequate or equipped with enough experience or knowledge to say otherwise. But let's consider for a second this question. Is there a conscious creator outside these mechanisms integrated in the fabric of time and space? Like a sort of infinite genius who wanted to replicate his consciousness to care for life, and thus created energy, frequency, vibration, time, and space. A creator who completely integrated in us the ability to create in our lives just like himself, for our own pleasure and expression of that life. To illustrate this concept further, could we suppose and imagine for a second an ingenious man who successfully creates a financial empire, where he successfully delegates and replicates positions of duty and movement to accomplish what he wants, all the while putting it together to be self-sustaining. In essence, is that exactly what God had done? Or are we just plugged into a massive computer matrix that responds and reacts to every form of input and output of personal energy? The question then must be acknowledged. Is the creator the founder of the enterprise or matrix? Or is the creator those things in themselves? I guess whichever way we try to look at it, we cannot currently get a real answer. At least I am not personally aware of an answer. I believe atheists and scientists got it right in the sense that a complex mechanism must have a creator. Thus, if we find a toothpick in the middle of nowhere, like a desert, we would understand that a thing as simple as a toothpick must have an original creator. But the other side of the coin is that since the creator is infinitely more complex than the creation, then who created such complex creator? The question also applies to scientists who believe it was the universe that created us, but then the same argument will stand. The universe in its infinite complexity created us, then who created the universe? If it's a thing that created us through blind chance, then who created the universe through blind chance? And thus, the question will repeat itself, like a never-ending flip of the coin, where you will always get either heads or tails, and no other answer is possible. Like the weird illusion of infinity when we look at a mirror while holding another mirror in front of it, reflecting itself ever forward through infinity. The argument is valid since we cannot know for sure what is the answer. Therefore, we should not create a hang-up, as if to say, since there is no answer, I cannot live out my life. We can only deal with the facts. So whether you believe in a creator of the universe or the universe as God himself, it does not matter. This is because our prayers will always be answered and we are always transmitting energy vibrating at different frequencies. Whether our transmission comes from our DNA, our brain, or mind, our entire consciousness and energetic blueprint, we know for a fact that vibrating is exactly what we do. Thus, we know precisely what we can improve upon. This is why I personally believe in Nikola Tesla's statement that we have the moral obligation to achieve immortality, for it is an aching need in our world. Death is the ultimate enemy, and we must not let it win. This is the will of God or the universe, as you must take your pick. This takes us to this next powerful concept, which I must admit I have personally experienced at least once, and it has given me happiness beyond belief. Letting go of all decision making. How can we suggest to leave out all decision making? We are not implying that you should leave out all thinking to someone else, but like the opening scripture suggested, we must acknowledge the unsearchable power of the known universe. The scripture reference has given us some powerful suggestions. In my opinion, it is the secret of secrets. Why? Because once we acknowledge that the infinite universe is all there is as the apex of creation, then we can ask it to examine and decide an infinite outcome for our best possible scenario of experience. Or if you are acknowledging that the Creator in the heavens knows what is best, then it is our moral obligation to ask Him to create through us as well and help us search for and live out the best outcome. To illustrate, let's consider that Mike wants a mate and a loving, fulfilling relationship. There are 3 potential choices he can go about making the decision. First, in his limited knowledge, he examines his prospects. He thinks of all the attractive potential mates in his immediate vicinity. Work, friends, friends of friends, friends of family, people at social clubs, bars, the gym, etc. He may have written the list and narrowed it down to the best 20. At which point, he may decide to start dating 1, 2, or 3 at a time. He will have to go through much work, examination, and observation to see and decide who will be the best choice. I believe this is how most people go about choosing their mate. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it is not the best at all. Second, Mike, in his limited knowledge, acknowledges that he doesn't know what he doesn't know, and therefore decides to leave the decision up to the universe or God to choose the best from the 20 prospects. Very wise indeed, since it will save him an inordinate amount of time and effort to try to pick one all by himself. The universe then goes to work and in an instant examines each of the 20 individuals' energetic blueprints and comes to a conclusion that Jasmine is a much better vibrational match for Mike than the other 19. What did God or the universe examine? What questions and details did the universe consider that were relevant to the selection process? Considering that a million different outcomes could possibly exist, then the universe, in a much higher realm, examines every possible scenario with each individual. The universe examines qualities, likes, dislikes, parents, family members, friends, goals, dreams, thought patterns, intentions, past, DNA impressions, and patterns, possible future outcomes, etc. The entire energetic blueprint is examined in connection with Mike's blueprint, and the best choice thus has been selected, Jasmine. It could be that Mike is an intellectual and needs support in the organizational skills department. Thus, the universe observes that Jasmine is a clean and organized person who dislikes others trying to rearrange her immediate space, and therefore she's picky about how, when, and where everything must get done. This would complement Mike's qualities. On the other side of the coin, the universe examines that Jasmine lacks basic common sense, confidence, and study habits that would improve her social life and career. Thus Mike, in his great intellect, knows exactly what books she should read, and helps her develop the skills and confidence that she needs to improve other aspects of her life. There's truly an infinite amount of details that must be considered that, with our limited conscious awareness, we could not possibly even come close to considering. The universe will examine past and future, length and width, height and depth, and will absolutely make the best choice. The best part is that it will make the decision in an infinitely faster way than ourselves could. And is not time more valuable than gold itself? As fascinating as we may find the second way to achieve what we want, it is still only the second best. Third and best way. Since we have acknowledged, hopefully thus far, that we do not know what we do not know, then it is the best course for Mike to not even consider the 20 people on his original list. Why? Because he doesn't know what he doesn't know. But what he does know is that he knows someone or something that knows best. God or the universe is left with some very limited options when he was asked to examine only 20 out of all the possibilities in the whole planet. Maybe 5 months from now, by improving Mike as a person, the universe can match his frequency to Veronica, whom he will bump into at the subway station once Mike's training has been completed. Thus, he will be the best person he can currently be to become Veronica's mate. Or maybe at some point or another, Mike will travel to a distant country where he will meet the best possible choice from all the outcomes. What Mike should do from the beginning is ask for a mate that the universe or God thinks is the best one possible for him. This releases all pressure and stress and allows the infinite universe to determine the best possible outcome that will make Mike and his mate the happiest. That is true wisdom. Quote, "Trust in Jehovah with all your heart and do not rely on your own understanding. In all your ways take notice of him and he will make your path straight." End quote. Taken from Proverbs chapter 3 verses 5 through 6. Remarkably, the scripture reference emphasizes this concept as the only way to successfully live out our lives. Quote, "Do not become wise in your own eyes. Fear Jehovah and turn away from bad. It will be a healing to your body and refreshment for your bones." End quote. Taken from Proverbs chapter 3 verses 7 and 8. Can we really see the dangers of taking decisions in our limited knowledge? I believe we see it every day in this world, with all of its pain and suffering. Consider the following teaching. Quote, "I will know, O Jehovah, that man's way does not belong to him. It does not belong to man who is walking even to direct his step." End quote. Taken from Jeremiah chapter 10 verse 23. These words at this point should resonate with us in the sense that we are not really forfeiting all self-determination, but that the best way to live is by choosing to be the best we can possibly become. Since we have an infinite source of wisdom at our disposal, why waste trying to consciously make all decisions by trying to weigh all the factors? The best part is that we are, in essence, still making the decision and delegating the hard part of the work to someone much better equipped to make such decisions. That in itself is the best decision. Quote, "Humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of God, so that he may exalt you, and in due time, while you throw all your anxiety on him, because he cares for you." End quote. Taken from 1 Peter chapter 5, 6 and 7. Quote, "Commit your way to Jehovah, rely on him, and he will act in your behalf." End quote. Taken from Psalms 37 verse 5. Quote, "Do not be anxious over anything, but in everything by prayer and supplication along with thanksgiving, let your petitions be made known to God." End quote. Taken from Philippians chapter 4 verses 6 and 7. Quote, "Commit to Jehovah whatever you do, and your plans will succeed." End quote. Taken from Proverbs chapter 16 verse 3. If we have considered that the best collective decision humanity could decide upon is to achieve biological eternity, then how could we ever hope to reach such point if we do not rely on such power of wisdom and power? How could we possibly become successful to find such answers to such a huge problem and challenge as death is if we do not decide to surrender our decision making to this much higher consciousness. Ironically, the scriptures do promise life everlasting on the earth for those who do make such a choice. But just like in the movie The Matrix, anyone can choose to just take the blue pill and wake up each day believing whatever we want to believe. But it takes real courage to take the red pill. This gives way to a powerful cognition and discovery, the secret to opening unfathomable riches and wisdom, the activating of our own personal legend. Your personal legend. The phrase is coined from a book entitled The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. In an interesting turn of events, this book came to me to fill the gap on some questions I had in my personal application of these concepts and knowledge through trial and error. When the student is ready, the teacher will appear. It is a teaching that will continue to develop us as we live out these concepts found in this book. Although an interesting fictional story, various concepts found in this book describe valid parallels that will help us integrate. One of them is referred to as our personal legend. It is certainly encouraged to the reader to pick up this book as a source of reference. It is not only entertaining, but as we read it, we will continually find nuggets of gold that we can apply in our lives to help us achieve our own personal legend. So what is a personal legend? According to the book, it is one great truth, that whoever you are, or whatever you are, or whatever it is that you do, when you really want something, it is because that desire originated in the soul of the universe. It is your personal mission on earth. End quote. I don't personally believe in predestination, as if we were predetermined to live out someone else's version of our lives. As if we were just puppets with strings attached with no will or force of our own. We must have self-determination and free will if we are made in the image of God, or for that matter, the universe. We are 100% in control and responsible for everything that happens in our lives. Everything begins with choice, including our surrender of our decision-making to the universe, which we already established as a personal yet powerful decision in itself. I believe a better definition of our personal legend is found in the following text. Quote, "Find exquisite delight in Jehovah and he will grant you the desire of your heart." End quote, taken from Psalms 37 verse 4. I feel it is a great parallel to Coelho's quote of the definition of our personal legend. I like to take away the mystic air and bring things down to earth with simple definitions and basic common denominators for most people to understand such concepts. We could even say that it says, "Find your greatest joy in the universe, and it will grant you its final outcome." The literary scriptural references denote to the idea that the thing which we most desire was given and hardwired into our essence, our own personal consciousness from the beginning of our lives. If we have already accepted as fact that our desires already exist in the matrix or field of infinite energy not defined by time and space, and if we also realize and accept as true that the universe or God knows the best outcome in relation to our desires, then by definition, we must also accept that the universe or God has already made the choice as to what will be the best possible life we could live out personally. It is like a hidden treasure just for us waiting to be discovered before the founding of our personal lives. It is a treasure in the form of a desire that was designed to bring us on a journey that will convert us into the best version of ourselves. A result or mental picture that will call forth powerful forces within us to take us to places that otherwise would not happen ever unless we decided to pursue our personal legend. I believe this is a true definition of destiny. Destiny is only a treasure designed by the infinite intelligence of God, hardwired into our being, which we could choose to pursue any time we decide to do so. It is like an inheritance projected to be given to us once certain requirements are fulfilled. Since only God could best make such decisions, then it would only mean that once we begin the journey in the pursuit of our personal legend, then and only then will we progressively experience the best feelings for us, the best people for us, the best things and possessions for us, and the best spiritual, mental, and physical wealth we could possibly experience. But like all knowledge, our experiencing the best will only continue to produce more desire for the best of the best. This process will continue through infinity. I believe Nikola Tesla experienced such feelings as he was unfolding and living out his own personal legend. It is obvious that he must have experienced incredible joy and fulfillment. How can we know? His legacy and legend to this day continues to touch us in very real ways. Any thought of not continuing to progressively experience such life was a nightmare to him. Is that not why he could express and call for the need for youth and immortality, since such vision was in his mind constantly and was vividly conceived? He himself was aching for it. The biblical reference does dedicate an entire book to contemplating this idea. King Solomon had written the book of Ecclesiastes explaining what his incredible wealth and success had given him. Consider what he expressed in his conclusions. Quote, I explore with my heart by indulging myself with wine, all the while maintaining my own wisdom. I even embraced foolishness to find out what was the best things for humans to do during their few days of life under the heavens. I undertook great works. I built houses for myself. I planted vineyards for myself. I made gardens and parks for myself, and I planted in them all sorts of fruit trees. I made pools of water for myself to irrigate a grove of flourishing trees. I acquired male and female servants, and I had servants born in my household. I also acquired much livestock, cattle and flocks, more than any of my predecessors in Jerusalem. I accumulated silver and gold for myself, the treasures of kings and provinces. I gathered male and female singers for myself, as well as what brings great pleasure to the sons of men, a woman, yes, many women. End quote. Taken from Ecclesiastes chapter 2, verse 3 through 8. You would think he was the happiest man that could have ever existed, but this was his following conclusion. Quote, but when I reflected on all the works that my own hands had done, and all the hard work that I had toiled to accomplish, I saw that everything was futile, a chasing after the wind. There was nothing of real value under the sun. End quote. Taken from Ecclesiastes chapter 2, verse 11. But why would he conclude that everything he accomplished was so empty and meaningless? Why did he not appreciate the inheritance he would leave to his future generations? Why did he not show gratitude for the great prosperity he had brought upon himself and his nation? The answer, quote, then I say in my heart, what happens to the stupid one will also happen to me. What then did I gain by becoming excessively wise? So I said in my heart, this too is futility. End quote. For there's no lasting memory either of the wise one or the stupid one. In the days to come, everyone will be forgotten. And how will the wise one die, along with the stupid one? So I came to hate life, because everything being done under the sun seemed distressing to me. For everything was futile, a chasing after the wind. End quote. Taken from Ecclesiastes chapter 2, verses 15 through 17. King Solomon was not necessarily a narcissist, nor negative in nature, as if always looking for the dirt in life. But his reflection is that he loved his life, but hated the fact his final outcome would be just like everyone else. He was having such personal and constant enjoyment in his life by continuing to create everything he desired that the prospect of death made everything seem futile and distressing. He highlights this point on the next few verses. Quote, I came to hate all that I had worked so hard for under the sun, because I must leave it behind for the man coming after me. And who knows whether he will be wise or foolish? Yet he will take control over all the things I spent great effort and wisdom to acquire under the sun. This too is futility. So I began to despair in my heart over all the hard work at which I had toiled under the sun. For a man may work hard, guided by wisdom and knowledge and skill, but he must hand over his portion to a man who did not work for it. This too is futility and a great tragedy. End quote. Taken from Ecclesiastes chapter 2 verses 18 through 21. Let's reflect on this thought. Since our growth can and will grow through infinity, then death is our ultimate enemy. It must be done away with. The prospect of death takes away value from our desires and even our own personal legend. Consider that even the scriptural reference promises of a time when the last enemy, death, is to be brought to nothing. The nature of the universe is infinite, therefore its will and its infinite intelligence is eternity. It is in our nature and consciousness to want to live forever and create forever. It is our deepest desire to unfold our personal legends through infinity. Nikola Tesla revealed it in his works and comments about life. Activating your own personal legend. We have talked about what is the best and fastest way to achieve. It is by turning our decisions and desires to the universe or God. We also talked about how we all have a personal legend that is hardwired into our very essence. It is a gift passed down to us as an inheritance for us to enjoy the best life has to offer. But how can we know for sure what our own individual personal legend might be? Also, how can we begin to pursue it to the point of fulfilling and arriving at its destination? The answer is simple. Quote, keep on asking and it will be given you. Keep on seeking and you will find. Keep on knocking and it will be open to you. For everyone asking receives, and everyone seeking finds, and to everyone knocking it will be open. Indeed, which one of you, if his son asks for bread, will hand him a stone? Or if he asks for a fish, he will not hand him a serpent, will he? Therefore, if you, although being negative, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more so will your Father who is in the heavens give good things to those asking him. End quote. Taken from Matthew chapter 7, verses 7 through 11. Activating our own personal legend is as easy as a request from a son to his parent. We may decide to ask of God or the universe to reveal to us the means to pursue our personal legend. But for those who may not readily pray to a higher being, then we must know that we must make a personal declaration to the universe that we are now activating that which we desire in our lives, as it is hardwired into our energetic blueprint. Once we do, we must begin to persistently ask and demand of it under this general intention. Specifically, whatever you think is best in connection to my deepest, most innate desires and the ability to follow through. Here you is the universe or God. This is a general idea of the prayer or personal declaration to trigger the progression to what must begin to be unfolded before our very eyes. This will activate our own personal legend to give us what has been chosen to be the best for us as individuals. On a personal note, my personal request was to Jehovah God, the God of the Bible. I realized that He would know better than I would. I wanted to create a life of freedom and prosperity for myself and my wife. I did not know whether I should start a business, begin a new career, or go back to school. I did not know what the best outcome should be or what could be the best way or course of action. I wonder, how could I ever really know which direction to take and realize the shortest, quickest route to a place where such feelings will be real in my life? I am not saying that you should pray or ask Jehovah personally, but you sure are welcome to give it a try, and you may be surprised with the kinds of answers you would get. Either way, you know your own personal circumstances much better than I ever could, and therefore you must take this information through your own cognitive reference and decide what you must do. You are encouraged to come up with your own conclusions, and that is very important to your personal discovery of your personal legend. The choice is up to you. One thing is sure, though your request must come from a place of full faith and total reliance on the power of such infinite intelligence, as such, we must surrender all pride and fear and let our personal legend be naturally revealed to us. How will we know? It does not matter, because the universe knows how to let us know for sure, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that we have been heard and that it will progressively redirect us on the right course. At such point, we must refer to our awareness and perception continually to the pieces and all of the natural evolutionary events that will turn us into that which we must become. They are there not to make us stumble, but to redirect and shift our energies, to progressively raise our individual frequencies to match the thing or place that ultimately belongs to us, our own personal legend. The irony is that the universe will only reveal the way in which we must go, but it will never show us what it is that we will receive. It will be an enigma to us, that which has been created and reserved for us. What do we mean by not knowing what it is? Through a series of pieces, our desires may begin to unfold into a movie. We could end up down the road with a picture in our mind, where we live in our dream home, driving our dream cars, going to our dream vacations. It may include a mental movie of ourselves with scenarios of being successful in some career, business, or endeavor. Either way, we will begin to notice that we are being nourished and bombarded by all these potential scenarios of what our lives could become in ways that we could never have imagined before. The enigma is that we won't know until the last second when we have arrived at our destination. So just like Joseph, who went from a lowly prisoner one day and was then literally transformed into a leader in one of the most powerful nations of that known world the next day. So it must happen to us the same way. Why? The Matrix Trilogy. The best way we can think to illustrate this concept is by referring to the Matrix Trilogy. If you have not watched them, I encourage you to do so. If you did in the past, I encourage you to rewatch them, so that just like rereading a book, you will get new cognition and realizations that will continue to propel you to your ultimate desire. In the movie, the character known as Neo finds himself constantly waiting on instructions from a guide referred to as the Oracle. It was only a few times that he had certain feelings that made him act courageously, regardless of seemingly insurmountable obstacles. This was first illustrated by the climatic scene where Neo decides to rescue his mentor Morpheus from the agent's room. He was to go through a military building and finally meet up and fight 3 superhuman agents. It was considered a suicide mission. Neo just left it up to a belief that he can do anything and everything. In the second movie, Neo finds himself in a situation where he felt perplexed. He had all this power and ability, but did not know how to ultimately fulfill his personal legend to end the war between the machine world and the human world, to liberate mankind from bondage and slavery. In this movie, an enthralling conversation takes place between the Oracle and now the fully awakened Neo, who is the One. If we desire to fully integrate the lessons found in this chapter, the entire series gives cognitive points of references that will help us really draw out the lessons and make them part of us. In this conversation, Neo explains to the Oracle that he has been seeing Trinity, his love, falling from a building in a series of recurring dreams. The Oracle asks if he sees her die. Since he does not see Trinity die, the Oracle explains to him that, quote, Absolutely no one can see the end result of choices or decisions we do not understand. End quote. Neo asked whether it was up to him to choose whether Trinity would die or not. Surprisingly, the Oracle explains to Neo that he was not here to make the choice because he had already made that choice. He was only there going through the motions to understand why he had already subconsciously made that choice. This conversation gives light to the essence of the concept of our personal legend. It could be said that we have already made the choice of what we ultimately want because it was given to us since the founding of our lives or our birth. Once we decide to pursue it, we cannot see the results in our mind's eye because we do not understand it, nor can we comprehend what it could possibly be. God's judgments are unsearchable and His riches unfathomable. Scientifically, if we did know, our consciousness will ultimately just get in the way of its ultimate fulfillment. Why? Because if its ultimate outcome were to be specifically defined and shown to us before its fulfillment, our limited minds would just convince us of its impossibility, and therefore we would begin to transmit a frequency opposite to that dream. We would steal God's dream and gift to us. In essence, we would create resistance, and our powers of perception would just collapse the wave function of the dream's collective energy and would ultimately dissipate it. To prove this point, consider another scripture reference that emphasizes the essence of this teaching. Gideon and his 300 men. The story of Gideon is found in the book of Judges chapter 6 through 8. This story is remarkable because it highlights the will of God and His desire to improve our personal lives. In this story, the nation of Israel is conquered by the nation of Midian. The Israelites become heavily oppressed and decide to search and ask for God's hand to get them out of this situation. God decides to appoint a young man named Gideon. Gideon is shown as a lowly worker in his father's winepress, full of doubt and disbelief in himself. Quote, "But Jehovah said to him, because I will be with you, you will strike down Midian as if they were one man." End quote. Taken from Judges chapter 6 verse 16. The real focus of this story is found in chapter 7. Gideon is appointed by God to lead an army of about 32,000 men. They were about to face the Midian army, which were 120,000 men armed with swords. They were outnumbered. For every man they had, the Midianites had 4. The enthralling event was before the battle. At this point, Jehovah decides to instruct Gideon to inform all the men in his army that those who had fear would be allowed to go home. God had explained to him that even though they were outnumbered, there were still too many. Jehovah wanted to prove His power in their behalf and did not want them to conclude that it was their strength in numbers and their personal faith and courage that would bring them success. At this point, 22,000 men chose the easy route and left Gideon with only 10,000 men. Jehovah, surprisingly still wanting to prove His power, lets Gideon know that they still have too many men present for the battle. In a strange test, they are instructed to go and drink water from a spring, where He separated the men who lapped the water from those who bent their knees to drink the water like dogs do. Only 300 used the palm of their hands to lap water, so they were chosen to battle. So first they were outnumbered 4-1, then they became outnumbered 12-1, and now with only 300 men, they were outnumbered 400-1. Obviously, no matter how much faith, power, training, stamina, desire, and willpower these 300 men had, they were not going to be an army of 120,000 men. Once they won, they could only attribute all success to the power of God and nothing else. They would have no choice but to acknowledge that such force existed outside themselves that could make such accomplishment. The same implication must be referred to Joseph's ultimate best outcome. No matter how much training, skills, or faith there was in his heart, there was absolutely no way he could have gone from being a lowly shepherd to second in command for the most powerful nation of that time on his own merit and power of transmission. All credit as such must be given to its rightful source. This is good because it teaches us that we can ask for a personal miracle in our lives. We can ask for that outcome that has been decided from the beginning of our life that would instruct us of such personal force. It will allow us to see the finger of God right into our personal life by pursuing and making active our own personal legend. The privilege to see and experience such a powerful outcome in our lives can only infuse us with unbelievable godlike power. We will have no choice but to become the sons of God. What will the power of God turn us into? What lessons and skills will we acquire as we are refined in the alchemy of the universe? Could we all learn how to eradicate illness, disease, and unnecessary pain and suffering? Could we establish a peaceful society under a new system of things where everyone could prosper and live in constant ecstasy and bliss? Will we not be able to eradicate death as promised by the scriptural references? Small autobiography. At this moment, maybe the reader may be wondering about the author of this book. Has the author of this book experienced the finger of God in his life? Has he finally reached the final destination and acquired his own personal legend? Well, that may depend on the time and place. Obviously, you are reading my collection of thoughts to this point in time in my life. It is now March 5th, 2015. I am sitting in my tiny living room with my computer hooked up to my TV, typing what could be a successful book or not. It is 11:48 p.m. and my wife of 8 years is upstairs sleeping in our bed with our new baby who is only 7 months old. Both are suffering from a common cold and are in the process of recovering. To this point, I can tell you I have gone through some rings of fire. I am becoming a better person for it. My recent pieces are telling me to focus on this book and nothing else. My wife's TV shows and movies present men who are writers and successful publishers. The most recent movie we watched is called Lucy. In this movie, the character, through some unfortunate events, becomes a powerful being who begins to acquire hidden knowledge, and the ultimate lesson for her was to pass it on. It made me feel like the universe was telling me to pass on the information I have been learning from incredibly successful individuals by sharing my own perspective in connection with quantum physics and how it relates to scriptural reference. My most recent audio training were recordings of a gentleman describing a system that could help anyone achieve their dreams. One of those listed potential dreams was the possibility of someone engaging in writing a book. The last book I read was The Alchemist. Interestingly, it describes the author as someone who grew up being trained to become something he did not really want to be, but he ended up finding his affinity with writing. There are probably hundreds of experiences that have continued to speak to me, trying to redirect my energies into writing a book. The irony is that I have never written anything substantial aside from some papers in college that were completely rejected because I failed to follow some instructions. And that was over 10 years ago. But the second I gave in to the idea and decided to write, I thought, wow, I have never been so excited about a project in my life until now. Information is continually being poured into my mind, and all I do is type. I'm not struggling to write the pages of this book, nor have I stressed about it, as if to say that my imagination was running out. But then my energies were redirected. Suddenly, my energies were influenced to focus on an educational project I had been struggling to finish for the last 2 years. I realized it was because I was only trying to force the matter to its completion. To this point, before writing chapter 8 of this book, I did not know what else to write. I didn't fret or worry about it because I knew I was being redirected to finish my educational project. But then I arrived at a point where at one of my Christian meetings, a personal acquaintance would approach me on a regular basis and tell me excitedly about a book that he thought I should read. I was curious because I knew the universe was trying to tell me something, that there was a lesson I had not yet grasped and needed to fully integrate. After some weeks, I was finally able to get a hold of the book, The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. This helped me integrate the lessons on pieces and the concept of our own personal legend. Not that everything I am writing was originated from that book, but there are certain ideas and concepts found in this book that through discernment, I was able to integrate with previous acquired knowledge and understanding. This resulted in this final concept as it stands now. I immediately began to think about how it related to the scriptural reference, successful individuals' personal stories, and quantum physical laws. So like a puzzle being completed, those whole pieces create an even bigger picture, fitting together perfectly in a master puzzle. The big picture was finally revealed. The answer to questions that I had agonized for the past 4 years finally came to light. As a student, I was ready to receive its lessons, and thus the teacher appeared to me to tell me about this powerful lesson in life. Moreover, the title and the content of this chapter was put together. The interesting phenomenon is that the information is being poured into my mind and I am just typing away. I had not conceived each sentence or paragraph or ideas before I started to write, but it was my decision to write this chapter based on a picture of concepts that is progressively helping me now to begin to integrate these lessons in this chapter. I almost feel like it is somebody else's words I am typing. In essence, I am teaching myself new lessons of life that I had not grasped previously. I am mesmerized by the beauty of this process and I can see that Jehovah is teaching me. So to answer the question, whether I currently have my own personal legend, as I reflect on my present, the answer is no, not yet. But I know I am being trained and refined like gold. I am learning lessons that will guide me and refresh me as I continue to fulfill my personal legend to its final completion. And how excited I am to experience it. Maybe as you are reading this book, many years may have already passed. I may at this point in time be already living my own personal legend. And through your own set of pieces, you are now reading this book because you must now activate your own personal legend. Maybe you pray for guidance or information that would empower you forever and help you acquire your heart's desires. Maybe this book is now speaking to your innermost profound being. Then again, maybe I'm just being dramatic and self-centered. The decision is yours to make. We have all heard the phrase, you can bring the horse to the river, but you cannot possibly make him drink the water. It is up to you whether or not you will take to heart these lessons. As the oracle explained to Neil, as soon as you step out that door, you will remember that you don't believe in any of this fake crap. You are in control of your own life, remember? We must take to heart such counsel. We are a cause of our own environment and we vibrate our energetic blueprint 24/7, whether we believe it or not. We will continue to affect our immediate vicinity with our own personal imprint, and it will continue to reflect back to us what we give it. Do we like what we see? We can change it if we don't, but it all starts with the choice to do so. Nothing else does. Neither the universe or God will make us change anything. The choice is always up to us, period. I wish to now conclude this chapter by emphasizing that a process is now taking place that will restore what was supposed to be our current reality. Life eternal and eternal youth is just around the corner. How can I say that? Such is the case. Because there is a blueprint to immortality. The next 3 chapters will cover that. An introduction for part 2 of Blueprint for Immortality. In this section, it will be discussed precisely through expert reference what it would take to create a real shift in people's minds. As mentioned before, Nikola Tesla emphasized that inexorable agents present in the collective consciousness of the world prevent a quantum leap forward from taking place. In the previous chapters, in part 1 of this book, we examine how, as individuals, we can ascertain the power of our minds and grasp our innermost abilities to acquire our desires. Since it is our moral obligation to do so, for the exercise of faith is always present, thus we either exercise faith that we can have, be, or do whatever we want, or we exercise faith that we cannot have, be, or do whatever we want. There is no middle ground, and our nature proves this is true, for we vibrate at every instant of Planck time, the exact blueprint of what we are. The laws of magnetic force will continue to perpetuate our predominant projections of energy. In the next chapters, it will be plainly shown that the biblical reference, in light of true social and political science and quantum physics, shows what prevents us from achieving a world of peace and security. Universal policy will be examined and how, in the future, the inexorable agents that prevent the current paradigm of things ruling this world from changing will be radically modified by new thought. Agents from outside this world, aka aliens, are coming not to obliterate the world, but to wipe clean the current corrupt matrix reality. We will no longer put up with the present state of affairs anymore, but before we do experience such reality, we must qualify and align ourselves to universal policy and exercise our free will and individual sovereignties to make the energetic exodus to freedom from modern-day Egypt and its corrupt practices. So like applying for new citizenship to benefit from the prosperity of a better country, we must exercise our brain transmission of frequency to conquer what is currently disqualifying us from entering the future world. Universal diplomacy is now being implemented from the government of the universe to help citizens of this planet to apply for residence and acquire its most unfathomable reward, biological immortality, on a new paradisal earth. Nikola Tesla's dream for a world where the need for biological immortality, beauty, and youth does and will absolutely exist.